Chapter 6, Mistress Wife. I want to make a comparison or an analogy to another situation that will give some example of what it is I'm talking about. I want to give you the example of what I refer to as mistress wife. And when I use that phrase mistress, it's kind of in the old-fashioned days we used to call a mistress, a man's married and he has another girl on the side. Nowadays in USA, we refer to that woman as an affair. But I kind of like the word mistress. It has kind of a cool aspect to it. So let's take the example of a man who's been married a while. Let's make him a USA guy. And as often happens in a marriage, the situation gets to a point where his wife is basically dried up to him, doesn't really want him sexually, and sees him mainly as someone who can do things for her. Like go shopping, buy this, buy that, run errands, take the kids to places, do things that she often might do herself, but is busy and wants to delegate to him. And he is primarily a service provider to the house. Now, on top of all that, of course, he pays for everything. Let's not forget that. He goes to work, whatever his job is. He makes money, and he supports the house. Now, in the USA example, it is not uncommon that the wife is also working. So it's not, to me, it's totally fair game that the wife would want him to do things, like, did you pick the boys up? Did you bring the boys over here? Did you get the dog food? Did you pick up the chicken I asked you about? Stuff like that. I don't really see as a problem in a sense that, we ought to all pitch in and do our half. She rarely has what you could describe as an intimate discussion with him. And when I say that, I'm talking about something like, honey, I have an issue, a problem in my life I want to share with you. Or he comes to her with that same concept, honey, there's something really bothering me and I want to talk to you about it. So we don't have a lot of nice pillow talk, sweet talk, emotional support talk. If he does come to her with an issue, she is likely to listen to it and interrupt him with the following concept. Look, I don't want to hear this right now. I've had a long day. I just don't need to hear this shit. And by the way, the situation is really stupid. You are completely at fault. Don't you see what you did wrong? So the concept is, in the discussion, she doesn't really support him or his position in it. Instead, she kind of comes against him. And rather than being on his side, she's part of the group against him. Now, this can happen a lot. A man is at work and somebody's against him, or a man is in some other aspect of his life, and there's something that has come against him. It could be a business. Suppose he owns a business, and some customer is complaining to him that the service or product he's providing isn't quite right, wants his money back, or is refusing to pay. He is troubled by it and talks to his wife about, what a jerk the customer is. And the wife, rather than say, oh my goodness, I can't believe that man's doing that to you, that's terrible, instead she says, well, you're kind of stupid because you should have done this, you should have done that, and the customer is right, so why don't you just give him his money back and don't be so stupid next time? So, naturally, he's down over this, okay? Now, on top of all that, the wife wants zero sex from him. doesn't want to look at his cock, much less suck it, and is kind of just generally turned off of his body. This, unfortunately, marriages get to this level. And I'm happy to tell you, not all of them do. Many people are married late in years, and they still love each other, still will listen to each other, still have a kind of, honey, if there's any problem, I'm here for you. And obviously those are the kind of marriages that really make it. The kind of marriage I'm talking about is one that isn't going to make it, obviously, and it's kind of going to go worse and worse. You know, the more she's like that, the less he's going to want to talk to her, and the less he's going to want to really do anything with her. All he'll become is an errand boy. That's what I call it. And it's just like, do this, do that kind of thing. Okay, so the guy, let's suppose, by the way, my example could easily apply the other way around. It could be the girl doing this. But let me just give an easier example. The guy finds a woman, and let's not make her a young woman. Let's suppose it's a gal around his age area. Let's say he's 40. This gal is 35, 36, somewhere in that neighborhood. She is divorced, and she's been divorced for a while, and she's over her ex, and she's in a position now where she's been single long enough that she actually craves a man. She's hungry for a man. It's wonderful when you find a juicy grape like this who still really wants a man, as opposed to a dried up raisin who really wants a man only as someone to really take care of her. It's like, what she's really saying is, I just want someone to take care of me. I need someone to pay all my bills, just handle everything for me. I don't want to fuck him. I don't want to suck him. I don't want to listen to his shit. I just want him to pay everything. That's kind of how I see the raisin. They don't really offer much. It's like, well, what do I get out of that? It's like, well, you get me. Well, great. What is you? You are sitting watching TV, doing nothing with your hand out, So let's give this girl a situation where she's still hungry. She's still motivated for sex. And you know what? She wants a cock. Let's imagine somehow they meet up together. It could be as simple as a coincidence at the grocery store. In fact, let's give a scenario where they're at a grocery store. She's walking out in a grocery cart. He's coming in, and she's putting the bags in her car, and one of the bags falls down to the pavement and crashes apart. And she says, "Oh, shit." And then she turns and sees him, and she's so embarrassed because she said a bad word. She's like, "Oh, I'm sorry." And he says, "Oh, it's okay, don't worry." And he sees all her stuff everywhere, and he says, "Here, let me help you." And they both are on their knees picking her groceries up, and he, is putting them in her car, and there's a point at which their eyes meet, and, we call that a moment. It's like they had a moment. They shared a moment. And during that moment, a lot of stuff happens in a person's body when that goes on. When you meet a person of the opposite sex who's actually a perfect stranger, you've never seen him before, you look in their eyes and you connect. And it's like it can happen in a split second. And he's close enough to her that he can smell her, he can see her, he can hear her. All of his senses are going on, his 5 senses, every one but taste. He hasn't quite tasted her yet, but he can very well imagine that this is a cool girl. And she gives him a kind of smile that's inviting. It's like open. Sometimes a girl, she can meet eyes with a guy, and for the girl, she doesn't want the guy. And girls are pretty good at closing that story. It's like, no, you got the wrong idea. No, and they'll make it very clear to a man the answer is no. Well, this girl makes it very clear to the man that the answer is yes. And she does it with a very simple thing. She smiles. And when she smiles, it's like a natural smile. It's not a fake smile. And he sees that smile, and of course smiles are contagious, so he smiles. And they both are smiling, and they're both down there, and they then stand up and put the stuff into her car. And they are then sitting there knowing, I want you, you want me. We live in a world where it's kind of hard to really find a good person. And this guy's a good person. You know, he owns a house. He goes to work every day. He takes care of his kids every day. You know, so he's the kind of guy, you know, generally speaking, women like to see, you know, responsible men who take care of things like that. The problem with him is he's married. So that is the one and only. It's not a small problem, obviously, but everything else about this guy is perfect. He's pretty good looking. He's got nice eyes, nice hair, nice body, nice everything. And he's just a calm guy. He's actually not out looking for action, but as it often happens, you know, action finds him. Well, this woman wants him and is at a point in her life where she's willing to reach out to him and let, you know, in other words, she's not going to let it be a chance of whether he will move on her. In fact, she looks and sees he's wearing a wedding ring. So she realizes right away he probably won't move on her. Now, you can say, well, she's a bad lady. She's going to move on a married guy. And, okay, you can judge her for that. That's fine. Probably right, or rightly so. But we live in a world where this kind of thing happens. You can call it sexual competition. Her attitude is, you know what? I want that guy. Some other woman may have caught him long ago, but I'm going to steal him from her. And as terrible as that may sound to you, it's kind of like part of nature. It's like, hey, guess what? There's competition out there. And it's a good thing, in a way, for wives to know, don't be too rude to your husband, because guess what? Another woman will get him. And it's the same thing for men. Don't be too rude to your wife, because guess what? Another man will take her. You know, it's that kind of scenario. So as much as you can judge it as being bad, I also judge it as being a good thing, because competition keeps things in check. In other words, a wife otherwise could just have kind of limitless bitch power. I can be a dried up, sexless, endlessly rude, insulting bitch to you, and there's not a goddamn thing you can do about it. That's kind of the concept that there is no sexual competition. With sexual competition, it's a situation that says, if you get too extreme, I'm going to find a new girl and I'm going to dump you. Now you can say, well, but you should dump her first and then go get the new girl. Well, that's just not quite how it works. Normally the guy kind of puts up with all that crap until he finds a new girl. And then the new girl opens up a whole new world to him, and he then realizes what a totally unreasonable bitch his wife is, and he will then go to the new girl. And what I want to talk about is whether this new mistress, affair girl, should become his wife or not. So let me tell you what happens. He's sitting there. He's got all her groceries back in the car. They've had this moment. They smile to each other. And now it's kind of time to go. He's actually going into the grocery store, and she's leaving. And she does something a little bit aggressive. She says, by the way, I hope you don't mind, but I'm a real estate broker. I sell houses. And if you don't mind, I'd like to give you my card. And she pulls out her card, which has her photo on it, and a real estate company name, her phone number, her fax number, and her email address. And she hands it to him. Now, this is a little bit of a kind of a coy world we live in. You know, coy means where you are, in a way, kind of playing a game. You know, I know so many people say don't play games, but let's face it, in a dating world, it's all about game playing. You don't want to come right out and say to a guy, I want you to call me and ask me out. You don't say that. You give him your card. Instead, you make it sound like a kind of business proposal. But it's not a business proposal. She has no reason to believe he has the slightest interest in buying or selling a home. That's not what it's about at all. But that's what she says it's about, really to give her an excuse to give his card. He takes the card, he looks at the photo, and of course the photo, she's all done up, makeup on, looking prim and proper. You know, the real estate brokers here in USA do this on their business card. They have their photo. Most people don't have a photo of their face on their card. It's kind of cool in the real estate world. They do that. I'm not sure why, but that's the deal. So he looks at the photo, and he looks at her, and she's in her non-work situation today without a lot of makeup, and her hair's kind of in a normal way. And he says to her, you know what? I like the way you look now better than this made-up way. I like you raw. Which is a bit of a forward statement for him. Let's face it. You know, he's being kind of flirtatious there, okay? When she hears that statement, she smiles. She says, raw? He says, yeah. And she kind of opens her eyes a little, flirtatious glance. He smiles because he's a little bit surprised at himself that he would even make such a remark. He did. You know, sometimes we men surprise ourselves with the things we can say to a woman. Sometimes we say really stupid things. I can tell you there's a study that showed men that what they did was they had a bunch of math equations, and they had 5 guys do it without a picture of a pretty girl, and they were able to solve the math problem, no problem. Then they had the same guys solve math problems with pictures of beautiful women there, and they were totally befuddled by the math problems and just couldn't do it. And there's a general theory that beautiful women actually make men kind of stupid. So you always know if you're doing well with a guy if he's acting stupid. That means he thinks you're really hot and he's just screwing up because that's the impact you have on him. Whatever. So anyway, after he makes this comment and she receives it in a positive way rather than like, oh my goodness, you shouldn't talk to me that way, I'm out of here. Instead, he says, by the way, my name is Rick, and let me give you my card. So he gives her his card, and it says, Rick Jameson, attorney at law. Let's make this guy a lawyer, okay? So, and they can kind of relate because, you know, real estate involves a lot of law, and it's very common that law involves a lot of real estate. And so they're not totally separate professions. They're both licensed. She had to get a real estate license. She had to do an education for that. She had to take an exam for that. He had to do the same thing. You know, so they have a common situation there, okay? And she says, oh, attorney. Very nice. And he says, oh, God, you don't want to know. It's a hard job. She said, oh, it can't be too hard. And she uses that word hard also as a kind of, you know, they're using in their language without even trying all these like sexually laced words like raw and hard. And it just kind of comes out like that. They're not really trying to be sexy, but, you know, it's funny how our brain works at times like this. We just come up with stuff like that. She says, hard, huh? Well, maybe I can help you soften up. And he now is kind of smiling at her sexual innuendo. It's a provocative statement. It's a statement made with the intent to cause an emotional reaction. You know, when she says that, she expects him to react to it, and she wants to know his reaction, because his reaction is all about, do I receive this kind of comment? Do I accept it? Or do I make it seem as though it were inappropriate? This is the game playing of dating and stuff. You know, you don't know if a girl wants you. The girl doesn't know if the guy wants her. So they make these little hints they throw out there to see how they're received. You know, for example, you can make a statement to a woman and make some statement about her beauty in a sexually kind of active way. And she may be really quite offended. and be like, don't you talk to me that way. What kind of girl do you think I am? And she will shut you down. And as a man, you can go, oops, and kind of move on, like, okay, I guess that's not happening, and you walk away. Now, the girl, women who do that, I want to warn you, you may overstep the scope of what you wanted. In other words, you may have wanted the guy, but you just didn't want him to get into sex talk, and so you're trying to shut down the sex talk, but unfortunately, you shut down the whole deal. So you got to be careful how you do that. You can kind of do it in a playful way, like, oh, no, we're not doing that right now, please, and a guy will be okay with that. But if you just sit there and go, nah, like a bitch, we're just going to walk away and say, see ya. So hopefully all these things play out. But in this example I have, what you have is a very willing woman and a totally emotionally available man. And what he's trying to explain to her is his job is actually quite hard and quite difficult. And by the way, being a lawyer, I'm a lawyer. It's a very hard job. And a lot of people look at it and go, oh, that's really cool. You're a lawyer. That sounds great. I want to date a lawyer. But what they don't appreciate, and if you want a man, you start to appreciate this about him, and he will come into your life. You start to show, if he says my job is hard, you come back at him, and it's like, tell me about it. What's wrong with it? So this gal's very smart. She says, I'd like to soften it. He says, boy, I could use that. So here's what she says, just to continue this along. She says, tell me the hardest part of your job. What's the hardest part? And of course, in his own life, he knows the answer to that in 2 seconds. He says, just keeping up with it all. My God, it's like I've got stuff to do every day that's due that day in court, no ifs, ands, or buts. And there's all kinds of things stopping me from getting it done. Like what? Well, for one, the phone. Everyone keeps calling me, and I got to write a brief, and it's due by 4:30. The clerk's office closes at 4:30. I've got to get it in at 4:30. And I've got nonstop people calling me with emergencies and situations, and they all want me to solve their problem. They need a letter on this. I got constant interruptions. Oh, it sounds like you could use some help. He says, tell me about it. Well, who's helping you? I mean, don't you have like an assistant? Yeah, but a lot of times when people call me, you can't really talk about a legal issue to my assistant. I mean, they got to talk to me. And the assistant can take the phone call. Well, why don't you try this? I got an idea for you. He's all ears. You got an idea for me? I'm telling you a problem, and you're going to help me with it. Now, let me just do a little pause here. He has shared this very problem with his wife no fewer than 100 times. And his wife tells him in so many words, I don't want to hear about it. Just fucking deal with your life. And look, you chose that career. You know it's a hard job. Be a man and do it. That's kind of the wife's, dried up raisin peach response to that. Well, here's this one's response. You know what you should do? When you've got something to do and you've just got to focus on it, and you got to write it and get it in, and there's no ifs, ands, or buts, just like you're telling me, right? And he goes, yep. You should tell your secretary. And he interrupts her. You know what? We don't use that word anymore, secretary. It's like a bad word. Oh, well, what do you call her? Legal assistant. Okay, she answers your phone. She keeps your files. She helps you type up letters. She does all that? Right. Sounds like a secretary. Oh, it is a secretary. But you want to call her a legal assistant? Actually, she wants to be called legal assistant. It looks better on her resume. Okay, so you're helping her resume and you're helping her get a new job and move along to her next destination? Basically, yes. The real estate broker, her name is Pam, by the way. Pam says, ha, you're funny. Pam's kind of a, she's a gal, a can-do gal. She's a type A personality. She's a saleswoman. She's presenting homes to people. She's not one of these, like what we call a wallflower, not like a little shy girl. Oh, it's so nice to meet you. She's more like, have I got a deal for you? You want to look at this house. This house is beautiful. Check it out. Let me tell you why you want this house. It's got this, this, and this, and you want all that. Don't worry about the money. We can get you that money. I know where to get a loan at a really good rate. I know a lender who will approve you without any kind of problem. Are you ready to go? You know, that's the kind of gal Pam is. She's a real can-do gal. So she tells him, you should tell your legal assistant, and she smiles as she says this kind of bullshit title, to basically hold all your calls until you get this thing done. And what you do is you wait until approximately 3 o'clock when it's done and out the door. And then you go get all your phone call messages, and then you return all those calls. And you got your project done, it's been on time, your mind is cleared, and you can now focus on returning all those calls and dealing with all your law clients. Because you do need to deal with them, right? I mean, you want to keep them as clients. You realize if you ignore them, you know, they'll probably go somewhere else. Oh, yeah, no, believe me, that's why I usually get interrupted and I take the call, because I don't want them to go somewhere else. Well, there you go. You just wait, and you let Pam, you let your legal assistant know very clearly. Let me tell you a little trick to that, because I know this too. I'm in the real estate business, and you know, Pam's explaining this to him. I don't want to lose a customer either. What you do is you say, hey, listen, I'm in the middle of something right now. Your call is very important to me. I will get back to you. Will you please let me finish what I'm doing, and I promise I'll call you back today. Well, you have your legal assistant tell that to the client, and hopefully they're going to be okay with that. He says, you know what? I like that idea. She says, you see, I can be useful. Wow, look at that. So now we have, you know, what you have is a situation here where you've got kind of a hunter, the man, with a huntress, the woman. She's a businesswoman, and she knows how to take care of business. It's like two hunters have found each other, and they like each other. And they've had this whole discussion about his business issue where he's brought it up, and she's proposed a total solution. Well, let's end that first meeting with them. He says, thank you. She says, no problem. He holds the card. She holds his card. And he says to her, really, thank you. And he puts that card into his top pocket. And he goes into the grocery store. She leaves. One thing that happens, and all men should know to do this, and all women should know to do this, as you're walking away, there should be a point where you turn back around and look at each other, and the two of you catch each other looking at each other, and you smile, you acknowledge, you wave, and you keep going. This totally happens here, and it kind of cements the relationship. It makes it like, okay, this is on. As he's about 25 feet away, he turns, he sees her as she's pulling out of her car. She drives this cute little Mercedes, by the way. And she smiles. She drives by him. She rolls the window down and says, goodbye, counselor. And off they go. Okay, so he then goes grocery shopping. He buys the stuff his wife ordered him to go get. Get some lasagna, get some milk, get some flour, get some cauliflower, and get a cantaloupe and bring it home. He gets it all. God help him if he forgets the cantaloupe or any one of those items. She will rip his head off. So he gets it all. He brings it home. Hi, honey, I'm home. Now, don't forget, he's got that business card in his top pocket, and it's got a colorful photo, and he kind of put it face out so that he's got a white shirt on, and you can kind of see the photo, the color photo, through the white of his pocket. And he walks in the house with bags, so the bags are covering that. He puts the bags down. He puts the groceries away. He goes into the bathroom to use the restroom, and he looks at himself, and he sees that photo in his top pocket, and he sees that you can see the girl's face, Pam's face, right through his pocket. And he does something that shows he's fully aware that he's kind of in a illegal zone here. He takes that card out and puts it into his wallet. Now, his wife didn't see that card, didn't see him do any of that. It's all a secret. So right away he's acting secretly, which is very mistress-like, very affair-like. He's, concealing this, hiding this, doing this under the radar. Well, he's trying to imagine, God, should I call her? Should I write to her? What's the best way for him to kind of move on her? Well, here's what I want all ladies to know about the way the world is today. Later, he goes to check his emails. He's one of these lawyers that checks his emails all the time. And the girl wrote him an email. And in her email, she's got something called an email signature where you have your business card like at the bottom of every email. It's very real estate brokerish-like. And she's got her photo there, and she writes a very simple email. It was a pleasure meeting you today. Yours, Pamela. That's it. So he sees that email, and he's kind of whipped at this point. He's like, oh, God, look at this. So, of course, he replies to it, me too. And he sends that back. And that's just day one, okay? Now, you can see where all this is going to go, A day later, they have a phone chat. And the phone discussion, he calls her at 3 o'clock. And he calls her at a time when most of his work stuff is done. So he takes a break. He leaves the office. He goes on a walk, and he calls her. His intention is to have a short phone call. That phone call ends up being more than an hour. And it's more than an hour because they're connecting. They are emotionally connecting. During the phone call, let me tell you what happens. Something very exciting for him. He says things that make her laugh. Men love it when we make a woman laugh. It's kind of like she's responding to us. It's like a connection. It's evidence of a connection. Let me see it like that. She says to him, I love your voice. And, of course, voice is something very important in a relationship. If you like a person's voice, you're going to like the person. If you don't like the person's voice, you're not going to like the person. So he's very happy to hear that, of course. And, truth be told, he loves her voice. So naturally, he tells her, hey, I love your voice. He decides to become more of the mover here. And he says, so, can I see you again? And she said, I will be at the grocery store parking lot again at 5:30 this evening. Meet me there. It's kind of a cool place because it's public, it's easy, it's not intimate, it's not some date. It's like grocery store parking lot. He's like, I'll be there. You go back there, and sure enough, she's there. He's there. He's been waiting for like 15 minutes. She pulls up in her fancy little Mercedes. There's a Starbucks nearby, so he says, hey, why don't we go to Starbucks and get a coffee? And she says, well, okay, but I got another place we can go, if you don't mind. He's like, oh, yeah? Where's that? Well, they got a little coffee place in the grocery store. It's kind of a cool place. For some reason, she wants to take a little bit charge of where they go. And for whatever reason, she wants the coffee area of the grocery store instead of Starbucks. It really doesn't make a difference. And he is going to basically do whatever she wants to do. So he says, okay. So they go into the grocery store. They go back to this area where they have coffee and some chairs. And she says, would you like some coffee? And he says, no, I don't drink coffee at the end of the day. Would you like some iced coffee? No, I don't want iced coffee either. Well, what do you want? And he says, I want you to sit down in that chair and talk to me. I actually don't want anything except you. She smiles. She sits down. They don't order anything. They just sit down and they talk. And they talk for like an hour. Now, he, of course, has a wife and kids at home who are wondering where the hell he is. And in fact, he gets a phone call from his wife during that meeting. Hello? Where are you? Oh, hey, I'm at the grocery store. Oh, okay, good. The wife is just too stupid to imagine what's going on here. So rather than go, how come you're there? Why are you there so long? What's going on here? Who are you with? What are you doing? Instead, she does what she always does, which is give him a big to-do list. Hey, listen, we need some milk. We need some potatoes. And we need more broccoli, okay? No problem. He hangs up the phone. He looks at her, and of course the girl knows what's going on here. So she says, how long have you been married? Yeah, well, at some point, they always say you should never talk about your ex or your current or whatever, but it always gets to that. He says 10 years, and he uses a tone that's like, it sucks. She knows it sucks. She doesn't really need to hear much about it, because if it didn't suck, he wouldn't be there talking to her. Yeah, but if you do talk about it, he says, look, I got to go. He gets up, he gets the cauliflower or the broccoli and the potato and whatever else the wife wants. And he leaves, and as he walks out, she's gone. And of course, his whole head is thinking about the girl. And he goes home, he gives the groceries to his wife. He goes back into his room, and he sees, indeed, there's another email from her. This email is a little more cryptic. It says, when? He says, tomorrow, same time, same place. And they start to have a little schedule here where they're going to meet at the grocery store each day. And it gets to a point where at last she makes a 3 o'clock rendezvous time and invites him to her house. And it's a time situation where he can afford to spend a couple hours there. So he goes to her house. She lives alone. Nice place, kind of a condo, apartment kind of thing. She pulls into her driveway. He leaves his car at the grocery store. They drive her car to her house. They get up there. And the whole time they're walking into her house, it's like they both know why they're going there. So their hearts are kind of beating. They're both thinking about it. They're both kind of quiet. They get in and they're in her living room. And it's not a big house, so the bedroom door is open, and it's kind of like you can see her bed. And it's like, oh, God, there's the bed. And she's thinking, yeah, there's the bed. They don't want to just go, like, jump in bed, but that actually is what they want to do. He can see she's a little bit nervous. She can see he's a little bit nervous. So they try to do something called break the ice. He decides to move first. He takes her hands, stands right in front of her. Her mouth slightly opens, and that's all he needed. And he goes in for their first kiss. It's a very nice kiss right on the lips. He doesn't jam his tongue down her throat, but he lightly kisses her. When he kisses her, she squeezes both of his hands. Right now, his hands aren't around her. They're holding her hands down by her hips. He then releases her hands and holds her hips. She sighs. The touch of his hands on her hips kind of gets to her, and she sighs. She kind of moves into him, rubs him with the front of her body onto the front of his. He is very excited about this. Now, we men are. If a woman does that to us, we will have a hard cock in like half a second. And, like right away. She can feel it. The fact that she got his cock hard so fast is very exciting to her. She's like, wow, baby, I still got it. Now, it's nice when a 36-year-old woman can still get a guy so horny. And she's happy about it. She's kind of like, hey, I must be hot. And, in fairness to her, she is hot. She's got a lovely body, lovely face, great personality. Bottom line is she got him hard right away. She has not had sex for a while. It is way overdue. So she's just kind of like, honey, let's do it. She's got what we call bedroom eyes. They walk over to the bedroom. And they get down on the bed. They lay down, takes the shoes off. She takes her shoes off. This is a non-Chinese deal, so the shoes are not taken off at the front door like you would in a Chinese household. We USA people, keep our shoes on. So they take them off. She undoes his tie. She undoes his shirt to see the hair on his chest. And there's something about hair on chest which makes a girl excited. I don't know what that is, but it does. She is getting wet, and she starts to rub her pussy on his leg, which he, of course, notices. And he continues to move on her. He kind of holds her down on his leg. And she starts to gasp and sigh and make little noises. He's getting very excited. He pulls off her pants. She takes her blouse off in a very nice way, showing her bra and breasts, which are quite lovely. He pulls one out and starts to look at it and then suck on it. And she tells him in a kind of a joking way, be sure to put it back into the bra when you're done. And he kind of smiles and laughs, and he actually does just what she says and puts it back in the bra, and then takes the other one out and starts to suck on the other one. She puts her hand underneath her breast and kind of holds it up to him so he can suck it better. That sucking on her nipple kind of like goes right to her pussy, gets her really excited. And the more he does that, it's like he's sucking right on her pussy. He then starts to suck back on the other one. He goes one to one, kind of back and forth. She does something that women will do every now and then. It's a little bit aggressive, but it does happen. She puts her hands on the top of his head and pushes his head downward. And it's going down, meaning below the breast, to her stomach. Below her stomach, he kisses her stomach. But what she wants, of course, is for him to be kissing her pussy. And she moves him down there. And he goes down, he pulls her panties to the side, they're still on, and he starts to lick her, and she just loves it. And she holds his head with her two hands, wraps her legs around his neck and back, and just does what we call face fucking. And what she's doing is using his nose as like a little cock and rubbing up and down his nose. He keeps his tongue out. So his tongue is going in her pussy, up and down, up and down. His nose is on her. She's rubbing his nose kind of like a sex toy that's not vibrating. His tongue is wet. She, after doing that for a while and just kind of going into an oblivion, she then kind of comes back to planet Earth and realizes that he's there with his hard cock. So she comes over and reaches and holds it in her hand, looks at it. She hasn't seen a cock in a while, and she just loves this dick. And she starts to suck it. He gets a little bit nervous because men will be like this. We're like, hey, whoa, don't get me too excited. I'll come in 2 seconds. I don't want to do that. So instead, he kind of is going away from her, and she looks at him. You don't want me to suck your cock? No, honey, I love it if you suck my cock, but the problem is you're going to make me come, and I want to fuck you in a good way. I don't want to come real fast. And she says, okay, I get it. That's cool. So she lays down, and it's kind of like, come and get it, baby. He comes over, and he's starting to put his cock in her. And she goes, wait, no, I want to see it. So she makes him kind of be upright. They're like perpendicular. She's flat on her back, and he's upright. She wants to see that dick go into him. She wants to see his stomach, his chest pumping as his cock comes into her. She holds his balls and his cock and guides it into her. He goes in. When he's in all the way, she pushes him out. She takes his whole cock out to look at it again. She wants him to do it. She says to him, I want to see it again. He smiles and puts it back in. Her mouth opens, her tongue's out. She just loves this. She pushes him out again. She says to him, again. She holds his balls, holds his cock, and guides it in. This time she lets it stay in. She maneuvers her ass around in a way that gets it just right. It takes a little bit of doing, but she finds just the right spot. And rather than going back and forth, in and out, instead, she's starting to rotate on it. It's more like what I call a swivel. And her hips are swiveling, her ass is swiveling. She's getting it just right, and he can tell. He's kind of stationary there. And it takes her a while kind of probing to get his cock into her and right just at the right spot. But once she gets it there, she starts really moving. And she starts going crazy about it. Really breathing hard. And you can tell, wow, she's going to have an orgasm. And she keeps going, and amazingly, it doesn't take her long. She has a full body shaking orgasm and stops everything, pulls his cock out, and rests. And she's like, oh, God, I love that. Well, he hasn't come yet, and she knows that. And, she's going to take care of him, but for right now, she needs to just take a break from it all. So they take about a 2 or 3 minute break. And she turns over and does something for him that he's never done. She goes to her side. His cock is very hard. It's wet from her. But her pussy now is sore. It can happen after a girl has an orgasm. It's kind of sore, and they don't want you to go back in. So she takes his cock, puts it into the outside of her pussy, closes her leg. She puts her head back, opens her mouth, and he starts to just pump her outside of her pussy, not in her. It doesn't take long. Her face looks wonderful. Her tits are back. He tries to grab her breasts, and she's like, no, don't touch my breasts. Girls, actually, they just don't want you to really touch them. So he just goes ahead and fucks her on the outside of her pussy for a couple of minutes until he comes. And then he comes. And she sees and can feel that he's come. They stop for a moment. They rest. She gets up. She cleans herself. He gets up and cleans himself. They talk for a while. He looks at the time. It's a very calm moment at that time. Your body releases these biochemicals in you that are naturally forming that put you into a cuddle mode. And it's a cuddle hormone. And during this time, men actually become quite truthful. So I advise all women, ask a few questions. Don't ask many, but ask some, and you can get some honest answers. And she actually isn't interrogating him. She just wants to know one thing. How you like that? And he smiles. Love it. So did I. Wow. Later he gets dressed. He goes home. He sees his bitch wife. There's nothing nice to say to him. Nothing nice to do. But by the way, I should add, the bitch wife is a very beautiful woman. So there's nothing wrong with her looks. She's got lovely hair, lovely face, lovely ass, lovely tits, lovely everything. She's just kind of turned off. And now he is turned on. Later, he checks his emails, and he's got an email from her, and she says, when? And he knows the answer. It's like he's hooked. And he wants to do this like... So, and they start to have this, like, amazing affair where he is, like, fucking her in a really nice way all the time. and she is getting a lot of great sex. And there comes a situation, though, where she wants to know, so, what are we doing? I mean, this is great. This is all fun, but are we having a relationship? Are you going to dump your wife, or are we just going to be like a little fuck fest here and there? The strangest thing, this is what I want to make this comparison with the daughter-wife scenario, is, first of all, what woman ought he be with, okay? And it seems like a no-brainer to me that he ought to be with the mistress, the affair. But the weird thing is the man will stay with the dried up, angry, nothing good to say wife, and will not go with the affair. It's the stupidest thing in the world, but that's how it is. And as much as people will say, oh no, it's wrong to have an affair, it's wrong, you got to stay married, be with the children, get the family together. I for one just totally don't agree with that. If your wife or your husband has gotten to the point where they just don't really like you anymore, remember, we only have one chance at life, and you don't want to be in a 10-year negative relationship. That just sucks. I think it's time to just say, honey, I get it. I know how you're feeling because you showed it to me for the last 5 years unambiguously. You don't need to say a thing. We're done. It's over. I got a new girl, and the new girl's really cool, really nice, really sweet, and loves to fuck me all the time. She has multiple orgasms with me, gets me off every time, can't get enough of my cock, wants to suck and fuck me every day. She helps me in my business. She gives me all kinds of good ideas that totally work. She cares about what I say, what I think, what I do. I talk to her about my problems, my issues. She listens. She gives me suggestions. She's on my side. Honey, we're over. Well, to me, that's kind of the odd comparison between, the mistress-wife concept and the daughter-wife concept is obviously a hot daughter-wife is a billion times better than the older, dried-up, raisin bitch wife. But even this example I gave, where it's not really a young girl, it's like a girl just kind of the same age or so as his wife, and it begs the following question. Shouldn't your wife be like your mistress? Shouldn't she be the mistress wife? And of course, you don't have to wonder about my answer to that. My answer is, of course it should. Come on. And I suppose one of my points to all this for men is to go with that, as much as that may be against the teachings of the church, against the teachings of your friends and community who will all tell you, oh no, you got to stay with your bitch dried up wife forever until you die, because that's a social custom. That's a there's like a what we call a peer group pressure to do that. Or you can say, like I say, which is, number one, I just don't see anything wrong in it. I mean, it's like one girl dried up, another girl's a grape, go with the grape. Every time I would say, go with the grape. And you can waste your life, you only got one, on the raisin. I say go with the mistress wife. Dump your dried up bitch wife and marry the mistress wife and make her your wife. What's wrong with that? So I give that concept, and I hope people will see it as a legitimate concept, not just, oh, that's just terrible, evil, awful, but rather, hey, maybe there's a point there. Mistress wife, daughter wife, there's a comparison to be made there. And the comparison is find her, marry her.